Hi, I'm Oscar,
I'm Charlotte.
and together we're the F1 couple. And welcome back to our podcast. We've had a little bit of hiatus for anyone who's watching us with video. You'll be able to see we're in a completely different place now. We've been moving house, which is why we missed Austria. But less about that and more about the British Grand Prix and the winners and losers of that. And we'll dive straight in. And I was very, very close to not doing what I usually do, and not putting the winner of the race first. But I'm annoyed. I'm annoyed because there was. We may as well get straight into that big incident that, of course, we need to talk about first. So yeah, the first winner for me is Lewis Hamilton. Who, I mean, it's difficult. You can't not put him as a winner given the swing and the championship back towards him, lowering that gap now to, what is it, I think about 8 points or something like that.
8 points.
So yeah, I think we should dive straight into that lap one incident that he had with Verstappen. Do you want to start? Give your opinion here?
I don't know, because I feel like every time I get asked this question, I change my mind a little bit. My initial thought was it was very much a racing incident, and then I looked at the footage, but every time you look at the footage at different angles, it seems to look completely different. And then, I don't know, and then I was like, the penalty's really harsh, but actually, then it felt like it wasn't harsh enough because actually it didn't have any impact, and I know that's not how the words. I know that's not how penalties are given and things like that, but it also... It was all just very, very complicated for me. I think if I was the one having to make that decision, I would have said that it was a racing incident. And I think that a penalty was harsh, but also, out of the two of them, if I had to pick, I'd definitely say it was Lewis's fault. Having said that, the way that Max drives and the way that Lewis was driving to sort of come in line with that, I guess, and to fight him, I said to my dad yesterday that, honestly, it's what they should be doing. You know, I don't think there was nothing malicious. I don't think there was anything that was particularly wrong with it. Yeah, sure, Lewis could have backed off. Max could have turned out a bit more than he did. And things could have happened differently, but it was also inevitable. It was going to happen at some point.
Yeah. It felt like there's going to be a crash between the two of them at some point this season. It's sort of been building up to a little bit, some very close racing in all of the races up until, I don't know, 3 or 4 races ago. We had battles between them on track pretty much every week. And yeah, in terms of this incident, when I first saw it, I was very much like, probably my very first thought was, well, that's probably Hamilton's fault because he's on the inside. He's touched Verstappen's rear tyre, so it's probably his fault. But then watching replays and stuff, it made me, like, during the race, it made me feel a bit more like it's going to be it should be a racing incident, because down the straight Hamilton is not ahead but very much side by side with Verstappen. Although he doesn't ever get in front, he's certainly alongside him. Even if it's not where the contact's made, but before that, they're definitely wheel by wheel. And you can see that from the onboards. If you look at Verstappen's onboard, you can see Hamilton's front wing poking in there. So there's absolutely no doubt that he had some right to be there on the inside of the corner. But yeah, and this is why it's a tricky one. This is why it feels like a racing incident, because you're like, Hamilton's kind of alongside, and yes, maybe he could have done a little bit more to get out of it, being a bit more towards the inside, but once he's alongside, and if Verstappen's giving him space and it's in a straight line to move out of it, he has right to move out and take that space. Yeah, and then it gets to the corner. And what the kind of confusing bit is that the contact's actually made before the apex, and people have been saying like Hamilton should have been more over at the apex, but they've not got to the corner yet. He still might make that apex. yeah, you can kind of say from looking at his trajectory if he's going to make it or not. And yeah, maybe he wouldn't have been right there, right over the curb, but he might have, I reckon, just still been touching it at the apex itself. So it's like he's not got like loads of room. He's not got another 2 or 3 car lengths. He's not pushing Max off the outside of the track. But like looking at Max's on board, he just cuts in so aggressively. Corinne Chandok on Sky did a really good piece about it, showing how he turns in correct and then really heavily turns in.
I don't think that's quite fair.
It is.
No, I saw it too, but I wouldn't say that he really heavily turns in. I think it's almost he's seen it, he's corrected it, and then he thinks that he can then carry on. I don't think it's, I know, I'm going to be really aggressive now. I appreciate that some of it was probably to move Lewis out of the way and to sort of like edge him out almost. But I also don't think that it was as aggressive as you were saying.
But the actual position of his steering wheel is he's turning in fairly normally. He corrects to be in a straight line to give Lewis a space, but then he really turns in harder than he was beforehand.
I saw it as well. But I think that you're being a little bit unfair. I'm not saying that him turning in at all was necessarily right. I'm not saying that he's faultless in it, because I really don't think he is. But I just think you're being a little bit unfair.
Well, I'm not. You're completely misquoting me. I'm not saying it's Verstappen's fault. I was just.
I didn't say that.
I was just saying what I was witnessing, that he's done this really heavy turn in on his steering wheel, and then the contact's made before they're even at the corner. So I question. So this is why I think it's a racing incident, because yes, Hamilton's the one that's behind that makes the contact in the rear, but Verstappen could easily have given him more space and didn't need to turn in that early.
But having said that, there was space there. I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
Yeah, there was space, but also you don't expect someone to turn in to try and make before the apex. So
yeah,
I think
whoever was at fault, whether the penalty was deserved or not, whether it should have been harsh or whatever, my thing with it is that the fuss that was made was not really okay in my head. Like, it seemed to be... Everyone reacted to, obviously, this is kind of going to happen because they're fighting for the championship, and I understand that. But if it was any other 2 drivers, the fuss of that incident wouldn't have been made so heavily. And when you've got Toto and Christian making the fusses, honestly making idiots of themselves, because that's how I felt. The whole thing, I actually thought was quite embarrassing from all parties involved. It was just the Max's thing on Twitter, Instagram, social media in general, afterwards, complaining about lack of sportsmanship. I agree, but I don't think it was necessarily just Lewis. I think everybody involved showed a distinct lack of sportsmanship after the incident. I appreciate they want to fight their corner, but it happens. You know, the fuss that was made from it. And I get that Max ended up in hospital, and actually, in some ways, I kind of agree with what he said, but Lewis wasn't aware that he was in hospital, and whether or not it was precautionary checks or not, he was still there. There was still reason to send him, so there should have been some respect in that sense. But also, I don't think Max would have necessarily acted any differently if it was his home race he'd just won. And quite honestly, the phenomenal performance that Lewis put in to get back to that position, I don't know. I just think the whole thing, I just think it was all blown out of proportion.
Yeah, it felt like sort of everything, the pressure that had been building up just sort of exploded at that point. It was going to happen whenever there was going to be a little bit of contact or something a bit more controversial happening between them, because it had all been quite, what's the word I'm looking for? They were being kind of friendly, I guess, and they're hard racing, but they were always being fair up until this point where they both just pushed a little bit too hard.
The thing is, I think that it wasn't like, you could see from the second they pulled away that they were going to crash. Like, they were just, both of them were being so aggressive. I know that's Max's style, rightly or wrongly. And I guess it was almost like for the first time in Max's career, somebody didn't just back off. And I don't know, the whole thing, it just wound me up a bit, to be honest.
Yeah, So if I just go back to the incident itself and my feelings towards it, I think after Hamilton was given the penalty, I was a bit like, well, it seems a bit harsh. Like, what do the stewards want to do? Just stop wheel-to-wheel racing now. But in hindsight, I think a penalty is fair. I would have probably, if I was a steward, which obviously I am grossly unqualified to be, I think 5 seconds would have probably been the fair penalty in line with other penalties we've seen. If you're just judging purely on the incident, which is what the stewards are meant to do, if you compare it to the one the day before between Sainz and Russell, fairly similar incident, slower corner, but Russell misses the apex, hits Sainz goes off. He gets a 3-place penalty, which is about equivalent to 5 seconds during the race. I think three places is about as low as they give a grid job. You don't normally see 1 or 2 places. And 5 seconds, obviously, the smallest in-race penalty. And if I think back to sort of other instances, the one that's most similar to me is when Hamilton hits Albon in Brazil in 2019. That would have been, where it's almost the same thing. There's the car that's ahead is on the outside of the corner. Someone is going up the inside, doesn't make the corner, hits the other person off. That was a 5-second penalty to Hamilton. The only difference is that I can see is that for now it's this one in Silverstone. It's between the two championship protagonists, which shouldn't affect what the stewards do. And I'm sure actually in this case it probably didn't. That's not the other thing, but the other one is probably the actual danger of the corner as well. The fact that it's a high-speed corner, which I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know if that's something I don't actually know if that's something the stewards take into account.
I think it should be.
I don't necessarily think. Yeah, it's a difficult one because the penalty is for causing a collision. It's not whether it happens at a high-speed corner or a low-speed corner. It's the fact that the car is too far back and then makes contact.
But the thing is, like at the heart of it, the penalty is because of dangerous driving, right? And
no, it's not. It's a separate thing if you can get a penalty for dangerous driving. That'd be more like something where you get a drive-through or you get a 10-second stop go or you can get
I appreciate that. But like the essence of it, the reason a penalty is even given, why a collision is a problem, is because it's dangerous.
Yeah.
And that danger is increased at a high-speed corner.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I don't know if that's taken into account. I don't think it is, and I don't necessarily think it should be in terms of the penalty that's applied, but I think it's something that could be in terms of the points, the penalty points that are applied to a license. Because that's them building up saying that's the dangerous driving element of it. You should get more points if the accident's more dangerous, but the in-race penalty shouldn't necessarily be different, reflecting that.
I'm not sure I necessarily agree with you, but I think we just need to agree to disagree on that.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think 10 seconds, no, I wouldn't want to see any more than that. I think 10 seconds was, like I said, 5 seconds is what I would be given. 10 seconds, I can still see that's fair. I can see the argument of people where they say racing incident as well, absolutely. I can't really see the argument of people who say any higher than that. Because it feels very much like hindsight thinking, like if Hamilton got a 10-second penalty and then finished 3rd or 4th, I don't think anyone would have been complaining about that. And you can't then give him a harsh penalty because he's in a faster car. That would make a mockery of the sport.
Speaking of mockeries of the sport, I almost felt like, and I appreciate this is how F1 works and being a team, but some of me felt that when Bottas was kind of forced to just let him pass, it was almost like that for me.
Yeah. I mean, that's a fair point, and a lot of people would have that opinion. I'm not necessarily, maybe with this incident when, one car is on 10 laps fresher tyres and is going to easily get through anyway, even if it's going to take another couple of laps.
But if it did take another couple of laps, he wouldn't have won.
Yeah, I know, but the team aren't going to jeopardise that, and it was outlawed at some point, and very famously, I believe, I can't remember the exact year, but it's in Hockenheim, either like 2010 to 2012 sort of era, it was definitely banned, and very famously, Alonso was let past by Massa when he was at Ferrari. The famous "Fernando is faster than you" message, which it was banned. Team orders were banned, but that was a very clear message. So teams are always going to get around it and just say these coded messages where the drivers obviously know what it means. All of the viewers knew what it meant as well, but it's not directly saying let the car past at this turn, like was what happened at this particular race.
But this is what I mean about making a mockery of it. Like that. This is the problem.
My thinking is though it's more of a mockery when it's banned, but all the teams are going to still do it anyway through coded
That's not
messages.
what I mean. I mean the whole team element of it. I think there is a big problem there. Because you end up with not necessarily the most deserving driver winning. And I felt like that was the case in this weekend, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I still think he deserved it. There'll be a lot of people who's like, well, if you take someone out of turn one, you don't deserve to win. But
I'm not necessarily saying that.
Yeah, you can't doubt that his drive back through the field was immense.
But
the pace he did, I mean, with about 10, hit the mic there a little bit. With about 10 laps to go when he was, I don't know how much it was, he was 8 seconds behind Leclerc, and you just think no, this isn't going to happen now. Yes, he's been closing in by about a second a lap, but his tyre's going to be going off now, surely. But no, he still did that and then made I was going to say a great pass. I mean, up the inside of Cops again, Leclerc was a bit like, nope, don't want to be out into the gravel.
Yeah, Leclerc seemed terrified.
What Leclerc did, I think that's exactly what Verstappen should have done on lap 1. That my problem with it is that Verstappen had when you're on the outside, you're always going to have more to lose because you're likely that the person on the inside is going to make contact with you and you're going to go off. You're not very likely to cut in and take the person out into the inside. It's more likely you. He was the one who was in danger because he was on the outside, and I feel like it's because he's not been in this position before where he is the driver who's favourite to win the race and win the championship. So you just need to fight, pick your battles. And I know it's not his mindset. He always wants to fight every battle, but I think it's something he's got to learn, that you have to pick them, and that's what Lewis does so well, and that's why he's 7-time world champion. And you've seen it earlier this year, the incidences in Imola and in Barcelona as well, where Verstappen's gone for not quite a kamikaze move, but really late braking up the inside into turn 1, and Hamilton's had to take evasive action off the track in both those times. And I think it's kind of interesting to compare those two instances to this one, because it's like, if Hamilton doesn't go off the track, Verstappen will be hitting him in the side and pushing him off the track and probably putting him out of the race. So it's then obviously there's no penalty for that because there's no contact because the other drivers go out of the way. There is a penalty for this one because the driver just turns in anyway and there is contact. So it would have been interesting in those two races if Hamilton, in this parallel universe where Hamilton turns in for those corners and gets taken out of the race, does Verstappen go and get penalties for that, go and get 10-second penalties as well?
I think the problem lies, though, in that yes, it's more complicated than this, but Verstappen was ahead and Lewis had space. That's in its most simple version, that is what happened.
Yeah.
And I've said, I think it was a racing incident. I think it's one of those things, and I think it's why we watch F1, because exciting things like that happen. We want to see drivers fighting each other like that, kind of. But that is what it was, and I think that's why the stewards made that decision. Partly because, at the end of the day, Lewis did have space. He could have chosen not to take that line, and Max was ahead. He had the right to be where he was.
Yeah, but that particularly in Barcelona, if Hamilton turns into the first corner, Verstappen hits him probably in his rear wheel, maybe his side pod, because he would have been ahead. But he doesn't, he gets out of it. And I just think that's what Verstappen has done this year, and especially through Cups where it's fast. He might have even, Leclerc only just went off the track because he had a bit of, oversteer or understeer. I think oversteer, understeer towards when he was exiting on the exit curb. Verstappen with more downforce in his car, a better car, he probably wouldn't have had that. He might have even stayed on the track. Even if he goes off track, I think there's argument there that he was ahead the whole time. He doesn't need to hand that position to Lewis.
Yeah,
and then he holds the lead.
I think that while Max is definitely maturing, and I think that's actually evident, there is definitely still elements of him being immature, and I appreciate he's been in the sport a long time, but he's still so young.
Yeah.
And I feel like, and yes, he is aggressive, and I'm not saying he's not, because he is, and that's a problem. He needs to learn when that's appropriate and when that's not. But also, I think sometimes people expect too much of him, in the sense that they expect him to be, because he can race Lewis, I think that some people kind of forget that he doesn't have the experience of him. And I'm not saying that he shouldn't, that's not an excuse.
Yeah.
But experience-wise, he's at Russell's level. Right?
Well,
age-wise.
Only age-wise. I mean, he has like 2 or 3 times as many years in the sport as George does.
Yes, I get that, but there's also maturity.
Yeah.
And that is a lot. Like, psychology is so important in sport.
Yeah.
That maturity is going to come into that. And I'm not saying that what he did was right, because I don't think it was. I think he was too aggressive. Like I said, I think from the beginning you could just see that he was too aggressive. But I do think that sometimes we forget that he's young.
Yeah, no, of course. I think, and it's been the case that all the other years he's been at Red Bull, he's been fighting for a few, like 1, 2, 3 wins a year, and that when those occasions come along, he has to go for it and be aggressive. And of course, he's not had the experience of being in a position where he's the favourite. And I'm hoping that he'll learn from this now. Know that, you don't need to fight absolutely every battle, because he had the faster car this weekend. Was going to have, certainly at least, if he gave out that position and was second, I really believe he would have had more opportunities to still go on and win that race through overtaking, through strategy. But no, if he turns in and is aggressive, even if it's not his fault, which it wasn't on this occasion, certainly not wholly, and with Lewis getting a penalty, I think the stewards have said if not at all, like 10, 20%, 80%, that kind of split. But you can get out of those battles. You're in it's what's the saying? It's, you have to win the war. You don't have to win every fight, sort of thing. Like, you can lose the battle but win the war. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I was like, I can't quite think of it either. But that's exactly what I mean. That immaturity, that is still there. And yes, he is maturing, but that's when that inexperience, in a sense, comes through. Yeah.
And you can only learn from your battle wins, sort of thing. And like I say, I hope he'll take this incident on board, and next time, maybe not turning quite as aggressive, just stay outside. Use the runoff. There's absolutely loads of it there, and
I actually fear that he won't learn from it.
Yeah, I'm glad there's a little bit, at least like there's 2 weeks off now instead of 1 week, because I would be worried if there's a race next weekend, his head would still be in like super aggressive, even more aggressive mode. Like, if he's behind, I wanna basically take Lewis out of the race. Not quite like that, but if there's any gap, he's absolutely dive bombing it.
I get that, but actually what I was meaning was that some of me doesn't trust Red Bull to teach him from that, because you could just see how angry they were.
Yeah.
And in a way, I think they are quite immature, using that word a lot, like in the way that just their mentality. I think Checo actually could be quite good in that situation, and I hope that he can learn from his experience.
Yeah.
But I think that the whole team as a whole, I think, can be quite toxic, and that's why I don't think that. This is why I worry that he won't necessarily learn from that, and he won't necessarily change anything.
Yeah. I hope he does change.
Yeah.
I certainly won't be coming from his dad, at least.
I don't think we need to get into that.
Yeah, shall we move on then? I think undoubtedly Hamilton, he's certainly been a winner this week, just purely because of, he's shown pace as well, as we saw in qualifying.
Yeah.
And that charge through the field was epic. But if you just look at the championship, the gap he's closed in now, there was a crucial weekend for him.
Yeah.
So I think we should move on then. And I think this is the person who really was the biggest winner of the weekend. And that, of course, is Charles Leclerc. And I've written down here 2 laps from sheer perfection, because that's what I feel like it was. If he'd have held on to take that win, it would have been one of the best drives that I've seen, really, in terms of what would have been basically domination in a car that shouldn't be anywhere near the front, really. Well, probably the third, maybe fourth best in the weekend, but so far away from Mercedes and Red Bull. He was once again excellent in qualifying, something we've come to expect from him, really. Starting the sprint in P4 and then maintained that during that sprint race. But even in the race itself, he got Bottas at the start, out racing that Mercedes car, which is impressive. I mean, maybe that's more on Bottas than Leclerc, but still, a great start. And then takes the lead when Hamilton and Verstappen have their little coming together. I don't know if anyone knew that happened. So
He was like, thank you very much.
Yeah, he was. And then just was pretty comfortably leaving. I mean, he's even having troubles with his engine, wasn't he? Sort of having some little cutouts. But him and the team managed that and managed to get that fixed.
That was one of the most impressive things for me, actually, of the weekend, the way that the team and him managed his engine failure.
Yeah. It felt like Ferrari trying to throw that win away as as they have often done in the past, but no, actually succeeding to fix that problem this time, and led for 50 out of 52 laps, which is very impressive, but also kind of heartbreaking. That it was those last 2 laps the only ones he didn't leave.
I really wanted it for him as well.
Yeah, me too. I mean, but I kind of did, but also it was, if Hamilton who took the wing, and then it was such an impressive drive back through the field from where he was, that I know this might be controversial, but I kind of didn't mind that happening either.
I didn't not mind, but hang on.
You did not mind?
Huh?
Yeah, that's fine. You didn't not mind that happening, as in it was fine that it happened.
Yeah. I did not mind that. But going back to that Bottas thing.
Keep going.
What?
Keep going.
Oh, well, going back to what I said about the whole team thing being a bit of a farce, really. I think, yes, Hamilton did really well, and we've talked about that for 20 minutes now. But I think Leclerc he was more deserving. He took advantage of something that happened out of his control, and he managed it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what they should be doing. Everyone has these races when they, think about Gasly last year. You just end up in a position where you're like, oh, okay, didn't think that was going to happen. And it's the way that they deal with that situation. I think he dealt with it perfectly.
Yeah, and I'd say even more impressive than the Gasly example, because it wasn't 5, 6, 7 cars in front of him had things go wrong. Only 2. He was third on merit already at that point when they made contact. And to finish P2 at the end is ordinarily being like, wow, what an excellent job. He's beaten Bottas there completely on pace. Yeah, so I mean, he's beaten Perez and the other Red Bull as well. But obviously he had complications in the sprint, which we'll come on to. So it's not just that he capitalised on other people's misfortune. It's the fact that he was there ahead of other drivers who should be there, capitalising on that misfortune on his own pace. Very impressive from Leclerc, very impressive.
And then I think probably, are you ready to move on?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say, I think the other one, I feel like we don't even need to say anything, just say Alonso and people know.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I wasn't really for the sprint thing, and honestly, I don't know if I am, because it's new, so I'm a bit like, oh, I don't know. But, blimey, that was a bit of a performance, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll do a separate podcast actually on the sprint race sprint qualifying, whatever it'll end up being called. I think sprint race would be more appropriate. But the sprint for now, we'll do in the next few days, week or so, maybe we'll release one giving our thoughts on that in general and whether we'd like to see it kept in for, obviously the next 2 trials and then brought in full-time or part-time in future seasons. But yeah, Alonso made that sprint special. I think without him doing what he did at the start of it, I don't think it would have been. I don't want to say as special as it was because it wasn't spectacular, but Alonso at least was.
Yeah.
At his start, he went from 11th to 5th in 1 lap, which is just, I don't know, maybe that's just Alonso things. It's just what he does.
I feel like obviously Alonso is Alonso, right? And he has that class, and I feel like I hadn't really seen it until this point. And it was so good to see, just watching the footage back, and just it was just seamless.
Yeah, well, we got a little bit of a taste of it in Baku, if you remember. After Verstappen's crash, we got that sort of crazy 3-lap sprint right at the end of the race, and again, Fernando was made up. I don't know, I can't remember exactly what it was, but 4 or 5 places over those 3 laps to catapult himself from outside the points to well inside it. And yeah, he showed that again. It just must be a format that he thrives with, which is maybe something you wouldn't necessarily expect from a veteran such as himself. You'd maybe more expect them to be sort of have that consistent pace over the race where they can sort of grind down sort of time gaps towards opponents. But no, he really still has that magic in him where he can blast off the line and make overtakes happen. Yeah. Obviously, he was assisted by his tyres at that point as well. It was maybe a bit of a surprise, I think, before we were expecting kind of everyone to be on mediums and maybe, a couple of ones nearer the back taking a crazy risk to try and gain more places. But Alonso was there. I think he had started 11th. So, I mean, Bottas probably more of a surprise, starting 3rd it would have been on soft as well, but couldn't really do anything with them. But Alonso certainly made them count. Eventually slipping back to 7th. Behind the McLarens, but in a slower car with tyres that are going off, still being able to have made up that many places over the course of the sprint was very impressive.
Yeah, definitely.
I think then converted that as well in the race, 7th in the race. So more solid points for him and for Alpine. Yeah. Yeah.
Not a lot else to say there, just...
No, I think talking of Alpine though, Ocon, he was back a bit this weekend, not ahead of Alonso, but I think he finished 9th, if I remember correctly.
It's all a bit of a blur, to be honest.
So it's a good points for Alpine though, and I'm sure they'll be pleased with the outcome this weekend. But yeah, I think we'll move on to some of those drivers that maybe didn't do so well, and that'll be in the losers section. I think we've kind of touched on this quite a lot already, but we'll start off with Red Bull, and it just sort of felt like the wheels really fell off the wagon in every which way possible this weekend for them.
I would say more flew off the wagon.
Well, one of them flew off.
Yeah.
So obviously, Verstappen out on lap 1, a really big blow for them because that's 25 points just gone straight up the creek.
26 probably.
Well, yeah, it could have potentially been 26. Obviously, then he still got those crucial 3 points in the sprint, so it wasn't completely pointless weekend. Actually, as someone, or some facts, kind of obvious, but it was the first driver ever to not get 0 points whilst going out on lap 1 of a race. Which, I mean, it kind of makes sense now that there's some given out on
well, it depends if it's like the last corner of turn 1 and everyone else has been already crashed out.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's ever happened before. I don't know, maybe if someone knows, they can correct me. I'm pretty sure there hasn't ever been a race where no one's finished. Monaco when...
I didn't mean no one had finished, but, you would just need 10 other people to crash out before
true.
you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that could have happened, yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure that hasn't happened where there's been a pile-up that big. I mean, we have seen pile-ups that big. Belgium 98 springs to mind, but that was when they had second cars, so everyone just got out of their car and went and got in the spare and took the start again. I think there's only 2 or 3 people out, despite there being like a 20-car pile-up.
I'm imagining like a Tour de France-esque kind of
Yeah, it was like that. Yeah.
Do you actually, you would. Do you have to complete a certain number of laps to get points though? Or is it?
I don't actually know, because obviously, yeah, you need to complete a certain number of laps to be classified, and
That's what
presumably you have to be classified to get points. So if 10 cars DNF'd on lap 1, 11 cars DNF'd on lap 1, presumably just no one would get that point for 10th.
Speaking of no one getting that extra point, what did they do? What was that? I'm not really sure why they did that manoeuvre with Perez.
Yeah, Perez it was just an absolutely shocking weekend for him from pretty much start to finish.
You say it was only Alonso that brought excitement to that sprint race, but
yeah, I mean, firstly, qualifying, Perez was behind Leclerc, so not an ideal start there, and then a poor start to the sprint as well, and then quite an even more poor error halfway through when he spun out. Just pretty much on his own, just lost it a bit on a curb and some dirty air from a car in front, and off he went. It was amazing that he didn't hit the wall, actually, because from the looking down the hangar straight, you just sort of saw him go straight on, and it's like, oh, that's going to be quite a big impact on the wall, and then he cut to his onboard and he's still just going along the grass. Like, how's he managed to do that? How's he managed to keep that? So, yeah, that was a little bit of impressive skill there to keep it out of the wall, but shouldn't have binned it towards the wall in the first place, really.
yeah.
And then team retired the car, decided from the pit lane so they can make some changes. No, so he took a load of engine penalties as well, so they've got another power unit to use throughout the season, so at least one slight plus side for that, maybe. He's probably not going to need to take a penalty at any other point during the season for power units. But yeah, then during the race he wasn't really spectacular. He was making up places, but like you would expect against much slower cars, but then kind of got stuck a little bit when he got towards the sort of top 3 teams, the midfield, the McLarens, the Ferraris, the Valtteris, Alpine.
Initially, it was rapid,
yeah,
and I was impressed, and then it just sort of ground to a halt.
Yeah, he was on a bit of a weird, not that weird. I mean, it's only a 2-stop strategy, but it was different. I think pretty much everyone else in the field did 1 stop, and he managed to get up to 10th, so he's going to have a chance of scoring 1 point, and then oddly Red Bull call him in to pit for soft, so they've got 2 or 3 laps to go, so he can then go out and set fastest lap to take that point away from Hamilton, despite it not giving them a point.
Yeah.
So he's gone from Perez getting 1 point for 10th to them getting no points, but Mercedes getting 1 less point. So it's exactly the same change in terms of the Constructors' Championship, but in terms of drivers,
Max, wasn't it?
it's taking 1 point away from Hamilton, basically, in that drivers' battle, which is weird to see a team do, because they almost always, you see them just in a situation like that, is just playing the Constructors' Championship and making sure that second driver can pick up those points for the Constructors, and not worrying about him directly in terms of the drive. So yes, obviously switching places and things like that, but not so much like this. And it was the reason I found it so odd was because if he's still in 10th and there's 2 cars have an incident in front of him, then that's an extra 4 points. Yeah, 3 points that he'd be getting for 8th instead of 10th. He'd be getting 4 points instead of 1. But now it's gone from getting... and that would be a much bigger gain in terms of the constructors. So it was baffling to me that they'd do something like that. I've not ever seen a team do things like that before. And I think it makes a bit of a mockery of the fastest lap point as well. I would much rather... I initially thought this was the rule, that it's to the fastest lap from a car inside the top 10. Not that you can only score it in the top 10, but if someone outside the top 10 gets the fastest lap, then the person who's in the top 10 doesn't get it.
I sort of feel like that could be something that changes.
Yeah, I would
especially from this sort of incident, because I do agree with you, it does sort of make a mockery of it. And also, I don't know. I think Red Bull had clearly done the maths to go, okay, chances are that people aren't going to crash out. And overall, basically, Perez, it would have probably been, Perez isn't going to catch up with Lando, who just, no, Bottas. No, oh my goodness.
What, who was in front of him?
Yeah, who was in front of him?
I can't. It would have been. It was Ocon, but
no.
Oh, in the championship.
In general, yeah.
And Norris is in third. Perez is. I think actually now in fifth, but he was in fourth. No, he was actually in third. In the championship before the race, and now after the race, Norris is in third.
They've clearly done that maths to sort of say, well, that's not going to make a difference there. Once that done at that individual level, then they took the team into account. But honestly, I think it was just probably Christian Horner going, well, I love Max, so let's protect him. Yeah,
I feel like it was pretty much just not. It's maybe being a bit too harsh, but I feel like it was an emotional decision by Red Bull being just a bit salty, being like, oh, I don't want Hamilton to get the fastest lap here as well. I don't want him to have got pole fastest lap and win the race. Let's just take that fastest lap away from him. That's kind of what it felt.
He didn't get pole.
Oh, sorry, fastest in qualifying. So yeah, just absolutely, I can't believe that happened. Like I say about the fast lap, it completely made it crazy. I remember the first time that I've installed them on here, I've seen fastest lap points being given out was in Formula E, and they first really when they had it. The rule, there wasn't a rule, it's just any car who set the fastest lap gets a point, and you'd see cars like who have DNF'd on lap 1 and, punctured or what, even then they just like have a whole wheel hanging off the car, and then they can go to the pits, and they had like a second car that they could get into, so they just get into the second car and like sit there for, I don't know, 20 minutes or something, go out, do a really quick lap, and then they bag themselves a point. Despite being out on lap 1, and I feel like that's kind of what we're going towards. If this is the rule, I don't know actually, but I believe in Formula E the rule is now it is the fastest lap from a driver in the top 10. I don't think it's the same as Formula 1. I'll go away and fact check myself, but I'm pretty sure that's the case.
I don't know if this is controversial, but I don't know if I like fastest lap.
I
don't understand.
I'm kind of with you. I understand why they introduced it for races where it sort of gets near the end and it's a bit boring, and there's, there's just gaps between like all of the top drivers and no one's really closing up, but someone can put their foot down and go for it. But what it turns out to do is just the driver who's at the back of the top cars pits, puts on some new tyres and goes and blasts in a quick lap, and if he pits early enough and has a sufficient gap, then the next person up pits, puts on soft tyres and goes back out. I think the only way it would really make it interesting is when, I'm going to say when because I think it will happen, someone comes in and their pit stop goes wrong, they don't get a tyre put on quickly, something goes wrong, the wheel nut's not going in, and then they've thrown away a whole bunch of points. But I don't really want to see that happening anyway. I'd rather the sort of at that point in the race, the drivers be where they're meant to be on merit from how they've raced throughout that race.
Yeah, I find it really difficult when people lose points because of pit stops. To me, it doesn't sit right. But I understand it's a team sport, but it's not what you see. You don't see the team element, and that's kind of the only point in the race that you do see that, obviously strategy, but where you physically see that team part come into play, and I find that a bit difficult. I get it, and it happens to everyone at some point. Anyway.
Yeah.
But Red Bull have definitely...
Shocking weekend for them.
Yeah, and as we said earlier, absolute disgrace really from what the reaction of the team. I was almost embarrassed for them.
Yeah, for me it was Christian Horner and Helmut Marko saying Hamilton should be disqualified, Hamilton should be suspended for the next races. I was absolutely not on board with that at all. I think that was just wrong, and the whole Red Bull sort of mentality is just really poor.
Very severe case of rose tinted spectacles, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, enough about Red Bull, enough about Verstappen and all of that. Let's put that behind us.
Yeah, and I think we should move on to our next loser, who's going to be Sebastian Vettel. His qualifying and his sprint all went fairly okay. Both inside the top 10. Can't really complain about that, but you just can't really forgive his mistake he made when he spun out all on his own whilst battling with Alonso. It was just that sort of classic Vettel spin we came to see when he was at Ferrari, and I thought it had gone away now that he was in a different car, but clearly not. It just every time, not every time, but all of these spins he's had, it's just like him putting the power down a bit too early and the rear end just swinging around, and that's it. His race is ruined. And yeah, I think that would have been battling well in the points. And after that, to the back, and he didn't recover at all, and then ended up retiring. Lap 40, very disappointing.
Yeah, it was very exciting actually seeing him and Alonso fight.
Yeah.
And I was disappointed when that happened because I wasn't ready for it to be done.
Yeah, they were having a good battle up until that point.
And I almost wonder whether he just got a bit excited. It was just like, oh, this is juicy,
Yeah.
And then just got a bit carried away and, like you say, just went for it a bit.
Yeah.
Bit too much. But
yeah, but having said that, he should be a little honourable winner really for what he did after the race when he went into the grandstands and was litter picking up. It was really awesome, and it was just such a Vettel thing to do, and made me really forgive him for making that mistake. I think
it genuinely made me forget that he'd made a mistake. Yeah. So I was like, oh, he's picked up all the rubbish.
Yeah, maybe it was a clever tactic really to make people forget that he'd done that ridiculous spin on his own by going and being so wholesome and collecting litter with the other fans who are doing that.
Yeah, so nice one, Vettel.
Nice one, Vettel. Yeah. that's going to be the title of this episode. I think not. We're not going to be talking about the crash, and I'll be like, oh my god, Verstappen and Hamilton hit each other. We're going to be, oh, good guy, Vettel. That's all that happened this weekend.
What crash?
Yeah.
I just remember the rubbish bags.
Yeah. Oh, the instant of cops. Yeah, that was where he was collecting the rubbish. Yeah.
Okay, enough of that, I think.
Yeah.
Shall we?
Yeah, I've not really got anything else to add on him. Yeah.
So then I guess there's those other people that we think are worth a mention. So the first one is McLaren. I actually wasn't sure whether I wanted to put Norris in the losers category almost.
Oh, in the losers? What?
Because it was that pit stop.
Yeah, I guess. I could see why you might think that, but I don't think it's actually cost him any position.
I don't know. I think it would have been a very, very different race.
Yeah, it could. I think. Yeah, I don't know. I still think Bottas would have been in front of him.
Yeah, but think about it. If that pit stop had been shorter, even the outcome of the entire race could have been different.
Yeah,
because
it's true, but
if he'd have held Bottas up more, then he might not have then been in the position to catch up with Leclerc so fast for then Hamilton to overtake him and then get Leclerc.
Yeah, I still think the ease at which Hamilton went past Norris, I don't think there'd have been anything different to Hamilton winning the race. Personally, I was close to putting Norris or the team as a whole in the winners category because it was such a solid weekend from them. But I didn't in the end just because I thought, no podium when, there was, when their main competitors finished P2 for being a Ferrari. So, that could have been them if things had played out slightly differently.
But you mean like Norris's pit stop hadn't have gone the way that it happened?
Not quite that. It was more like they'd have had to have made up more place at the start, or been where Leclerc was in qualifying, or have got up that position in the sprint where Leclerc was.
I was knocking about.
I know.
Still though, I don't know.
Yeah, it was a weird one. Because there were so many dodgy pit stops. You were saying that you thought it would be because of the heat, and then almost immediately the commentator's like, "Oh yeah, I wonder if it's because of the heat."
I love it when that happens. Yeah. It makes me feel like I'm good at what I do.
Yeah, I think I don't know what you were referring to. Whether you were actually referring to the guys doing the pit stop being like fatigued,
No,
or whether
no.
you actually, because it could have been. There's often a bit of that play where I know I can't perform to my highest ability when it's hot in terms of working, and so I wouldn't imagine. I would imagine it's the same.
That's not what I meant at all. I actually meant the physical, like, mechanisms.
Yeah. But it's weird because the like they're on cars. They're going to be getting heated to like hundreds of degrees.
Well, yeah, but
of heat on them, and
I appreciate that.
and
But
it was like, oh, a little bit of a hot British day, and everything goes wobbly.
right, I'm sorry. First of all, I take massive offence at you calling this horrible heat wave a little bit of British heat. Secondly, think about the way the tyres are affected by temperature changes. Why would other parts of the car not be as well?
Yeah, I know, but you just kind of don't expect a walnut to, if it's 10 degrees hotter, to suddenly not perform as well.
Well, I don't know. I think my logic was that our patio door expands in the heat, so I wasn't sure whether they might be expanding or just being a bit weird because of the heat.
It could be something like that. The thing with these cars is quite a lot of it is so precise and to the millimetre that just the tiniest bit of expansion could do something like that. But yeah, if we can wind back a little bit to McLaren and just wrap them up, and I think it was just, like we've been saying, a solid weekend.
I was just happy for Ricciardo.
Yeah, where they should be. It was good to see Ricciardo back there where that car should be on pace, although still consistently behind Norris.
I'll give him a break.
Yeah, I know, but it's just like, when Bottas was finishing consistent behind Hamilton he was still getting grief for that.
Yeah, but Bottas was getting grief after being experienced for several seasons in that car.
Yeah.
As opposed to several races in that car.
Yeah,
and it's clear that he was finding it difficult to adapt to it.
I wasn't trying to slate Ricciardo. I'm really pleased that he was back up there on like very close to Norris's pace.
I think the heat's just making me a bit feisty.
Yeah, he was in quali. I think he was only 2 thousandths behind him. So you can't get much closer to your teammate than that. So yeah, and like I say, consistent. They're just in quali 6th, 7th in the sprint, 5th, 6th in the race, 4th, 5th. Just like that one place progression from each driver. Yes, no actual overtakes. They were just due to Perez dropping down and then Verstappen dropping down during those 2 races. But yeah, like to see that nice progression by both the drivers throughout the weekend.
Essentially, it was just consistency though, and that in itself is impressive. Yeah,
and it's going to be a good haul of points. And even with Leclerc taking 2nd in the race, still, I'm not going to try and do the mental maths in my head, but that can only be like a 1 or 2 point loss out to Ferrari over the weekend, which is pretty good.
They are really, really close now.
Yeah.
Oh, it's actually really exciting. And actually, Norris going up to 3rd as well is exciting. That's not something I would have said would happen at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of the year when he was 3rd, and you're like, oh yeah, that's great, but
nice
he's gonna drop down a bit later on when Bottas and Perez, well, Perez in particular, I think Bottas has been weird. He's been really pretty unlucky. Had some terrible races, but had some really bad luck.
But you mean getting smashed?
Like Imola, he got smashed out by Russell, which I don't think was Bottas' fault at all. In Monaco, his wheel got stuck on forever.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. And then obviously in Baku, he just had an absolute shocker and was nowhere. But since then has kind of been there-ish, where he should be. Not great. Obviously in Austria, I can't remember where he finished, but I'm pretty sure it was behind Norris. Because Norris has got
got 3rd.
I can't remember.
I thought Verstappen and Hamilton Bottas.
Was it another?
I don't know, there were too many Austrias, I'm just confused.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Norris got a podium, didn't he? Yeah.
I don't know.
He's certainly got 1 in Austria. I'm not just talking about last year. I don't know. It's the heat. It's getting to us. All right.
I have no idea what's going on anymore.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. I'm pretty sure it was.
Was that the?
I'm pretty sure it was Verstappen, Hamilton, Norris, then Bottas.
Was that then the other Austria?
No, that was the second one, which
No, what
was
I'm saying,
Austria.
the fake Austria. Was that when Bottas got third?
Yeah.
Oh, all right then. Anyway, enough about that. Should we move on?
Yeah.
Russell.
Yes. I think, although, again, no points, but
That's not true.
he got a penalty point for his instant. Yeah.
Hey, that's the first point he's got for finishing in the top 10.
You're right. But qualifying again was even more impressive than we've seen before. To start the sprint in P8 was very much a wow moment. The fans loved it. It was so good because he only had one set in Q3, so he was out sort of between when everyone else was doing their laps, and he was doing it all on his own. You could hear the fans roaring him on. It was absolutely insane. I really loved that.
I think that was a lot of why he ended up in the position he was in, because he was just like feeding off of it.
Yeah, you often hear people say, the drivers say that he can give you an extra 10th or 2 tenths, and I think he might have got a little bit out of that as well. But yeah, he did pretty well in the sprint, given that the Williams guy is obviously not going to be on that race pace. But yeah, he had that incident with Sainz where he locked up and sort of punched him off basically, and it was when I thought it was at first I thought it was harsh, but when you see that he's locked up and run wide, then you have to say, yeah, kind of fair enough that he's going to get that 3-place penalty.
I just felt like they waited and they teased me. I felt like it came quite late, and I was like, because I was looking, and I was like, oh, it's all right, it's okay, he's not going to get anything, it'll be fine. And then it wasn't fine.
No, but yeah, started in 12th and then finished in 12th as well, but never really felt that he was in the fight for points like we've seen the last couple of times. But what I really feel like it's coming home. George's points are coming home, everyone.
Oh.
I'm calling it. And I don't want to jinx it, but Williams were good, like real good in Hungary last year. I think it could happen. I'm calling it here first. Sorry if I jinx it, everyone. Sorry if he retires on the last lap, but
I don't want to do this anymore. I think I've had enough.
I reckon it's happening, Hungary. I was looking back at the previous races, and obviously we know he's been doing stellar. France, he was 12th, retired from Styria when running well inside the points, 11th in Austria, and now 12th again at Silverstone. That consistency, being that close.
So basically what you're saying is he's being consistent and he's waiting for a couple of people to screw up.
Yeah, it's happening, people. It's happening. Hungaroring.
And then
George Russell points.
And then on the last corner, Alonso will just kind of swipe it.
Yeah.
Anyway, the heat is really broken us, isn't it?
Yeah. So as we move on, another honourable mention I think needs to go to the other man involved in the incident with Russell, and that is Carlos Sainz. He actually had a relatively poor qualifying in 9th. Behind Russell. You wouldn't have expected that in the Ferrari, given that Leclerc was...
That was exciting.
Up in 4th. But yeah, had that tangle with Russell, and you can only really put that down to him having that poor qualifying. I mean, if he'd been up at the front, then he wouldn't have been getting involved in a tangle with the Williams.
It's a little bit like Imola with Bottas. It's like, yeah, sure, it wasn't necessarily Bottas' fault, but he shouldn't have been in that position anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that dropped him down to 19th. But he actually had a really great sprint race after that, coming back to finish 11th, and then with Russell's penalties, start the race itself in 10th.
Bet he felt a bit smug about that.
I'm sure he did. I'm sure he did much rather than not being hit off.
Yeah.
But and then converted that to 6th, but just behind, like, he was hassling Ricciardo for quite a long time during that race. And I'm certain he would have been ahead of Ricciardo if it wasn't for his really bad pit stop. I think he was probably the one who got done over the worst in terms of pit stops
Why can't I remember this? Do you know what?
It was really slow. He was sitting there for a really long time.
Honestly, I feel like I can't remember Sainz in this race.
Yeah.
And I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, you often see that where Sainz is just kind of anonymous because he just
gets on with it.
Has that consistency, sort of those quiet races.
Speaking of someone else, actually, that I kind of forgot about was Stroll.
Yeah.
And he just sort of appeared for me. He keeps doing this. I think I've said this 2 or 3 times now. That is just like quietly getting on with it and then somehow ends up in the points. And I'm like, what? When did that happen?
Yeah, he wasn't on a particularly out there strategy. When it's happened before, so we're saying this sort of cheeky strategy where they for the Aston Martins, they start on the hards and then they sort of get their way into the top 10 because they run long and everyone else is battling and slowing each other, slowing themselves down, and they make up all those positions. But he was on a pretty normal strategy. He just must have had a really good opening few laps, but we didn't really get a chance to see it because his quali and his sprint were just kind of unspectacular. Nothing really happened. 15th in quali and then 14th in the sprint. That's sort of, nothing special at all. And then somehow at the end of the race he's 8th and just didn't see that coming at all.
Yeah. I was just thinking, do you think, that whole we've been Lance Stroll thing?
Yeah.
Do you think that the TV people have caught onto it, so now they're just not showing footage of it?
They're not showing Lance Stroll at all. Yeah. And until he's going for a wonder move, then they're going to cut to a replay of him bouncing over some curves.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot today.
Yeah, this has been quite a long one. I mean, I kind of expected it coming in with the incident. Kind of expecting that to take up quite a long time.
I feel like if you're still listening, you deserve a congratulations, because I don't think I would be at this point.
Yeah, especially, I mean, we've gone so long because we've gone a bit crazy from the heat that we've got going on in this room, but yeah.
It says 32 degrees, but given that it's 8 o'clock at night, that's quite uncomfortable.
Yeah, we shouldn't be this hot this late. I'm just going to have an ice bath, I think. Yeah, I'll just wrap up a little bit. Like we said earlier, we're gonna do another little bonus podcast, summarising our thoughts about what the sprint race was like. Sorry, just the sprint, not sprint race.
Sprint qualifying, isn't it?
Just sprint. It's called F1 Sprint.
Yeah, I kept hearing. I don't know.
Oh yeah, don't listen to commentators. They're like, sprint race, not race. It's not a race. It's just sprint.
I was about to go off on a spiel and I was like, no, shut up. Just stop talking.
Yeah. So we have that, and then next up after that, it's Hungary, which I think that Ferrari are going to shine again there. They call it Monaco without the walls, and we saw what their pace was like in Monaco. So I'm hoping for a pretty good Saturday.
That's some pretty strong predictions you've made today.
Yeah, Russell points, Leclerc or Sainz on pole. You heard it here first, people.
Yeah. Ferrari 1-2. Do you want to go that far?
No, I'm not going that far.
George is going to get his first podium.
Yeah.
Do you know what? Mazepin's going to win the race.
Yeah, Mazepin.
No, sorry. Win. Okay.
Mazepin win. Anyway, yeah, I think I think that's quite enough of that. I've gone clinically insane from the heat, and I've been Oscar, and you've been Lots, and we're the F1 couple. Follow us, give us a like or a follow, a subscribe, whatever it is, whatever platform you're on. Find us on Instagram, Twitter. We're at the F1 couple, and until our next bonus podcast. We'll see you later.
We do.